Hi, Tori.
Hi, Kaylin.
I'm so sorry. My video is not working. So I'm trying to connect up a different webcam and see if I can get something
Okay. Oh, no,
going.
that's not what you need, is it?
No, it's not very ideal. And I always tell people to put their cameras on.
It's always the way. You have like a, yeah,
For some reason, Zoom, it always seems to block it and struggle to unblock it.
right, okay, yeah.
Right. I might just start admitting people
Okay.
and I will try and get my camera working.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. Some bells going on in the background, so I'm just going to put myself on mute. But I think Kaylin's also.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I am unfortunately having some technical difficulties, hence you cannot see my face this morning. I'm trying to get my camera on, but it's not quite having it this morning. Um, but thank you all so much for joining. We'll just wait a couple of minutes, get everyone in. But it's nice to see faces for people whose cameras are working today. I hope everyone's had a nice morning. Just give it a couple more minutes. Hope everyone's got a nice cup of tea or coffee ready.
Hey, everyone.
Hiya. Can everyone just hear me clicking away to admit people? Okay, got quite a few folk in now, so maybe we'll just get started. So, for those of you who have just joined the call, my camera has decided it's not having it today. So, we are going with a black box for me this morning. Hopefully, at some point throughout the call, you will see my camera come on and see my face pop up somewhere along the way. Um, Luckily, I'm not taking this session. It's Tori, and you can see her, which is the most important thing. So, hi, and welcome to this curved session on listening smarter, practical user research, and AI for charities. As I mentioned, I'm Kaylin, and I'm from Third Sector Lab. Thanks for joining us. Today, we're going to look at how to run effective user research and where AI can help that process. Feel free to say hi in the chat, introduce yourself, share your name and organization if you want. I think it's quite a nice opportunity to connect with different folk. And feel free to pop questions in the chat box as we go through as well. I think I'll just kind of get going with introducing Tori. So we have Tori this morning. She is Head of Digital Practice at CAST. She leads CAST work on programs like Digital Campus, Design Hops, and Digital Skills Framework. And yeah, today we're going to look at user research. So Tori, if you want to go for it.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks, Kaylin. And hi, everybody. Really lovely to see you all and to be here today. Very excited to talk about user research and where there might be particular kind of AI opportunities for us to try and maybe save some time, given that we all come from probably like social minded organizations, if not all charities, which always tend to be very kind of strapped for time, I guess. So I'm just going to share my screen and then we can get started. Okay, hopefully everybody can see my screen. Okay, fab. So I'm going to move on. So I work at an organisation called CAST. So for those of you who don't already know us, so we are a charity ourselves, and we work with charities and other kind of like socially minded organisations to help them embed digital to increase their impact. And so we do this by running a range of different programs, and we convene spaces as well to support charities with different digital ways of working, service design techniques, and in the last couple of years, I think, looking at AI as well. So we run a really vibrant community of digital leads within the charity sector. That brings together around 400 digital leads from charities. We'll link to that later on in case it sounds of interest. And then also within that, there's also a peer group that discusses AI, particularly and how they're starting to use it in their organizations and embedding it within their policies and their practices. We also work on the flip side with lots of funders as well. So we're currently kind of convening conversations with grant makers, trying to support them as they adopt different ways of working with AI. Yeah, we kind of also support them to try and kind of fund in slightly different ways and kind of like moving on with the different funding techniques as well. So we kind of work in a couple of different spheres, but that is CAST. So today's aims. So hopefully you'll leave today having gained tips on how to plan and do user research. So we'll go through kind of best practice today, but there'll be some kind of tips, I guess, on how to run things in a slightly kind of more time pressured way as well. So like just kind of like quick workarounds almost. Also, you'll hopefully kind of take away a sense of kind of how to make sense of what you hear in your research. Then we'll also be thinking about how AI can save you some effort and some time, but also thinking about how we can do that responsibly as well within kind of ethical and other considerations. And at the end, there's lots of resources and templates to take away to help you to start doing that user research and thinking about how you can use AI within that process as well, and perhaps kind of outside of user research as well. So I'm going to be doing a couple of live demos of some AI tools, just so that everybody can see some of those tools and those activities in action, especially, I guess, for those who perhaps haven't started using AI yet. And yeah, as Kaylin said, we'll be kind of doing some questions. We've got some time set aside for questions towards the latter part of today's session. So please do add any thoughts or questions or comments in the chat as we go, and we can kind of come back to those later on. And yeah, so that's just a quick agenda. So we'll be running through, doing a quick check-in with everybody now to see where everybody's at. Quick introduction to user research, what it is, why it's good, and then diving into that user research process and sharing lots of tips and templates and resources. I don't know if there's a bit of an echo there. And yeah, so we've got some time for questions. Then I'll be sharing some of the resources that I mentioned throughout today, but also other ones that we think might be helpful kind of generally. And then we'll do a quick check out to see how everybody's feeling at the very end. Okay, so quick check-in. So I'm going to ask everybody, if possible, to visit Menti. So it's a quick polling tool. Some of you may have kind of already come across it. I am not sure. Kaylin, are you okay to share the link in the chat if you haven't already? Thank you so much. That's great. You can either use that link that's in the chat that Kaylin's just shared, or alternatively, you can use the QR code there, or you can go directly to menti.com and then kind of insert that eight number code there. So I'll give everybody a quick minute to get in there. We're going to be answering how it is that you currently learn about your users. So I'm just going to change over the tab. Oh, amazing. Lots of responses in there already. Okay, so only 4 responses per person. So do feel free to add in kind of, additional options. Okay, brilliant. So lots through informal conversations coming through. Survey is also a strong contender. Nice. Brilliant. I'll give it another kind of 20 seconds or so. Wow, okay, nice. This is really great to see. It's really interesting. So some people in here, so we've got 19 kind of familiar with user research interviews, which is great. That's kind of what the main focus of today is going to be. Okay. So lots of informal conversations happening, which I think is absolutely the norm, and that's absolutely fabulous. You're kind of getting all of that insight from users, and then also surveys as well, because they can be really quick and a really great way of finding out kind of where people are at in a particular moment. Okay, great. Okay, I'm going to move everybody on, but thank you so much for filling that in. It's really interesting to see where everybody's at. I'm going to then click onto the next slide. So hopefully that will then move you on to the next one. Yeah, so feel free to add in one interesting or surprising thing that you've learned from a service user recently. And this could be through kind of any method, those informal conversations or through a survey or anything. Feel free to type in your responses. Hopefully that has moved everybody onto the next screen. Brilliant. So lots of stuff coming in here. Brilliant. So going to scroll down. So lots of interesting stuff here about perhaps kind of website usage or lack of knowledge maybe about the organization that you represent. So kind of some space there for, for sharing and getting your services out there more widely. User journeys for websites. And then also some really nice kind of like colorful insights into our users as well. So they write children's books, and there was one up here which is really fascinating about looking after 6 hedgehogs. I would love to know more about that at some point. That's great. So yeah, so obviously lots of amazing insight already kind of coming in to your organizations, to yourselves as well. Yeah, so today we'll hopefully just be kind of going through some additional, maybe kind of like some tips, or you're just kind of formalizing what it is that you're already doing. But I think, it's really interesting that there is that practice, that habit of already listening to your users. And I think that's really, really normal within Charities. We are always listening to our users. You yourselves will know them really, really well. But I think the practices that we'll talk about today is, I guess, kind of formalizing some of those conversations that you're having into like slightly more structured research and interviews, so that you can so I guess it's less kind of anecdotal, and it's more so we're getting more statistic and more information coming from our users. Brilliant. Okay, well, thanks ever so much for filling those in. I'm going to take us back now to the slides, and I'm going to get started on a quick introduction to user research for anybody new to it here. So user research, I figured we could just kind of do a quick definition. So user research is the study of users or people, depending on kind of how we like to call them. We do that to learn about their needs, behaviors, and motivations. And this is so that we can create new and meaningful services or products, or maybe even tweak existing ones that we're running within our organization, so that they better meet people's needs as well. So it's all about understanding what our users' needs, what their behaviors are, and then that means that we can then create solutions and products and services that meet their needs. Okay, so there are a lot of different ways of doing user research. So they're kind of grouped into different types. So qualitative and quantitative. So you may already have heard some of these terms, but really quick kind of intro into these. So qualitative research is what we're going to be talking about today. And it is used to explore ideas and understand experiences of people or of topics. And it will involve methods like user research interviews, which is our focus today, but also things like focus groups, observations, and yeah, other things. So it's kind of more about like the wordy stuff, the meaning stuff. Quantitative research will kind of help us to, I guess, validate some ideas that we might already have. It helps us to find kind of relationships within data. And it's kind of more focused on the yeah, sorry, no, Jess, you're on the right slide. Sorry, I should have added in another slide for this. Yeah, so the quantitative research is the number and the statistics side of things. So we'll be focusing on the qualitative side of things today. And the reason for the focus on user research interviews specifically is just because although I think it can sometimes be a bit more time consuming to run, we do actually, I feel anyway, that we stand to learn loads more about our users through a few interviews, just because we're able to ask open questions. We can ask follow-up questions if we don't understand something or we need more detail. I think whereas with surveys and other things like that, we'll only get really short answers to the questions that we specifically think to ask. And so it's, yeah, kind of much more exploratory doing user research interviews. Okay. So why is user research awesome? So it really helps us to understand our users, as I said, and also to challenge our assumptions internally as organizations or as individuals. So by doing research, we can really kind of reduce the likelihood of making any decisions, whether, you know, design decisions based on incorrect or maybe unvalidated or outdated assumptions that we have about the behaviors of the users and the people that we work with. And this is a little kind of diagram that I guess kind of demonstrates this. So imagine that we kind of create a service, a product, or a program within our organization. And we and our stakeholders absolutely love it. So we're kind of all really excited, really enthusiastic about it. But then when you look at it from a user's perspective, it's quite different. And so before creating something, it's really important for us to understand our users and to find out what things are like from their perspective and how they behave. And so we do this upfront using research. And yeah, so we'll be talking about how we can do that today. So reasons to do user research. So user research can really help us to answer these crucial questions that are on the slide here. So where are our members struggling? Where is this problem that we think as an organization or as individuals we're solving, is this the one that we actually need to solve, or is it something else? And also thinking about, you know, with limited resources, with limited time as well, where can we add the most value to our users' experiences with the least effort as well? So really important to help us prioritize and figure out what we need to be doing. I guess if we don't do user research, otherwise we are doing kind of slightly educated guesswork, and potentially kind of basing large investments in developing a new service, a website, or an app on slightly anecdotal evidence as well. Other reasons for doing user research: it builds really great trust and relationships between us and our users or our communities. So it makes so it helps users to feel heard and valued. And also crucially, it really saves us time and money by allowing us to front load that risk. So if we can learn what people truly need really early on, then we're able to fail faster in that development journey, or and we can, develop things that people actually need and want. Okay, so we're going to dive now into the process. So so this is the user research process that we see, and one that we use at CAST. So it's a 5-step approach. So firstly, step one, we'll start out by mapping what we know about a particular challenge or a topic that we want to learn more about from our user's perspective. So we'll be starting to think about, like, what are the things that we already know with this topic? What are the things that we don't know? And also, what are our assumptions as individuals, as organizations, about this topic as well? And then, step two is planning your research. So this is all about figuring out who we're going to be talking to, what are the things that we want to be able to find out, and creating a discussion guide that will help us to ask the questions that we need to learn more about. Once we've got that ready, we're able to do the interviewing itself. So we'll be talking to people, we'll be observing them and kind of listening to what it is that they have to say. Then once we've got all of this amazing rich data and insight from our users, we'll move on to step 4, which is about synthesizing your notes. So making sense of what it is that you've heard through your research and from your users. And so at this stage, you start to kind of group some of those themes, identify patterns, and generate insights for things that need addressing as part of this. So you've kind of got these needs, these insights. Now we need to start thinking about kind of how we'll go about addressing them. And so then step 5 is all about sharing what we've learned, trying to get that buy-in from senior leadership potentially, and then figuring out what those next steps are for you. Okay, so that is the user research process. Just a quick note on using AI. So as we go through each of those 5 steps, I'm going to be talking about the different AI opportunities that there are within each of those steps. And I'll be also kind of including a couple of quick demos where there are particular risks or any considerations. I'm going to talk about them at each step within each slide. But I just wanted to share a few ground rules here that feel, I guess, important to outline across all AI use. So I won't be kind of repeating these as we go through, but just wanted to kind of raise them here. So just making sure that we're using secure and trusted tools, and also that we're never inputting any kind of sensitive data or personally identifiable data into AI systems without safeguards. So we know that training often happens with data that we input. So we just need to be really careful that we are anonymizing data, especially if we're using kind of those free versions. I think enterprise level security can be a little bit safer, but it's still really important that we're checking the tools that we're using. And also going on to that second bullet point, using AI within your organization's policies or guidelines, aware that not every organization already has a policy, but yeah, it's kind of like worth just using it with caution, and within policies if they exist. Just to say, generally documents or reports that might be in the public sphere already can be okay to use, because I guess they're already there, they're already available and accessible to AI tools and searches. Just making sure that you're always checking and critically reviewing what AI has created. So if you are using AI, just make sure that you have somebody still kind of at that human in the loop, so really checking the outputs, making sure that they make sense. And then also considering if it's a justified use of AI. So thinking about, does this activity align with our organization's mission? Okay, so just a few ground rules there. or principles, I don't know. Okay, right. So we're going to start on step number 1, so mapping out your knowledge. So when we do user research, we generally do it for a reason, because we want to learn about a specific topic or a challenge that our users are facing. And so before we start talking to our users, we want to be able to start mapping out what it is that we already know about this challenge and what we still need to learn. And this is a really, really important step to set up a research project well. So I really recommend doing this. And it can be quite insightful outside of the user research project as well. It's a really good kind of exercise that I'll run through in a minute. And we'll use this exercise to inform any of the questions that we ask in our interviews later on. So really good step to make sure you're set up properly. So yeah, so we're gonna use a tool. I'm going to show that in the next slide to map out what you know, what you think you know, what you don't know. And it's also a good opportunity here to challenge your own assumptions, but also your organization's assumptions as well. And it will also help us to prioritize what it is that we need to find out first. And so obviously we're talking about this user research within time constraints. If it is at all possible to run this exercise I'm going to share with your team, it's really valuable to get everybody's input and insight into this. But obviously that's kind of a stretch goal for today. You can do it on your own and make a really good start anyway. Okay, so to do this, we're going to use, it's a tool that we use across kind of every single project that we start using, we set up. It's called a knowledge board. And it is a template here. So it's got 3 different columns. So we've got what we know, what we think we know, and what we don't know. So this is a template. It's obviously kind of got some ready-made post-it notes, but there's in the template there's a blank version for you to be able to use. So everything that we put in the what we know column, it needs to ideally be backed up by data or evidence. So you might have analytics or support logs or previous surveys that you might have run. So it's not just internal opinion. And so if you're running this session with your team and somebody wants to add something in there, but they don't have any data to back it up, it's a really great opportunity there to kind of challenge your team's assumptions and put it maybe into the what we think we know column so that we can validate it through research. And so the idea is that you'll kind of move through each of these different columns, adding things that you absolutely are certain about in that what we know, what we think we know. So they might be hunches, there might be assumptions that you want to try and find out more about. And then in the things in the what we don't know column are, absolute kind of unknowns and areas that you might want to explore also through user research. And then once you start doing your research, the idea is that you can move things along from the what we don't know, what we think we don't, what we think we know into the what we know column as well. So it's really nice to be able to see all of the stuff that you didn't know at the beginning and then you do know at the end of the research. So it's quite a kind of a cathartic exercise at the end. So once you've got this filled in with your team, you'll start to use the 2 right-hand columns to decide what are the areas that you want to focus on in your research. And so that's a nice exercise to do with your team as well, thinking about where are the priorities for us as a team and as an organization to learn more about from our users. Okay, so as I said earlier, all of the resources are going to be linked at the end of these slides as well. So they're there with links. So opportunities at this stage. So in step 1, opportunities to use AI. So you could use an AI tool to review any existing research that you might have internally to populate your knowledge board. So I've done it before where you can just ask it to, if you upload a report, for example, or some research that you've got obviously anonymized, then ask it to separate things out into what we know, what we think we know, and what we don't know. It does quite a good job of that, and then you can start to populate that. I would definitely recommend doing it as a team, as humans as well, but it can be quite a good start to just kind of get those creative juices flowing. And then so the second one here is using AI to do an initial sweep of existing external academic research. So trying to find out, more about the challenge that you're trying to solve from from a more research point of view. And I'm going to demo that quickly. So I have set up in this, hopefully this has changed. So I've basically kind of put together a prompt for AI. So I'm going to be using Gemini. At Cast, we tend to use either Gemini or ChatGPT, depending on, we kind of switch between the two. So I'm going to ask Gemini to create a research report for me, looking at lots of different things across that are out there in the sphere. So looking at research papers, research, kind of papers, reports, that sort of thing. So I've just written here a prompt. So it's asking it to produce a report for my charity, looking specifically about at AI and young people and the use of AI. And so I've been quite specific here. So I've got in the UK, ages 13 to 25, for example, and its effects on their mental well-being. And then you can get quite specific and ask it to kind of, I want the output to be quite short. So it's, I can kind of consume it. I can read it easily. And then you can also add in any particular formatting or instructions that you want it in here. So I've kind of asked it to add a section detailing mental health benefits, but then also the risks, and then also for it to focus on data that's happened within the last three years. So this is just kind of coming up with a bit of a brief for Gemini to go off and have a think about this for me. And so within Gemini, there's this tool. So if you click here on this tools section, you can ask it to use the deep research function within Gemini. And so I'm going to ask it to do that. And then I'm going to click here because I've already got the prompt ready. And it's going to take a little while. So I think it's having a little bit of a think. And what it does is it takes the prompt that I've given it. So it takes all of that information and it says, right, I've put this plan together for you before doing any of the actual research. And so now is our opportunity to check that actually we agree with everything that it's saying that it's going to do. And so it's got here, so it's added in ages 13 to 25 as I asked for in UK. So it's kind of got different things in here. And so if I wanted to specify at this stage that perhaps I wanted to focus on the northeast of England, for example, I would click here on edit plan and say, I actually want you to focus this on the northeast of England, and it will then update that research plan for me. Okay, so then I'm going to hit start research, and then it takes a little bit of a while. And so I am going to come back to this in a minute. So we're going to come back while it's kind of doing the work in the background. We're going to come back to it. Okay, so we're going to move on to step number 2 in the meantime, while it's doing its magic in the background. So this is all about planning your research. So at this stage, we are going to start thinking about who are the people that we want to talk to and why. So defining our audience. What are the things that we want to be able to find out? So we're going to go back to our knowledge board for that. So in those right 2 columns that we talked about. What is the right method of research to use? So, you could think about, are you going to be talking to people in person, online, on the phone? What's easiest for them? What's easiest for you? And also, things like observations or other kind of methods as well. You could start to consider here as well. What is the desk research that I can do to better understand the challenge? So this tool that I'm using in the background, that's going to help also kind of pull in some of that research, that academic, those academic papers. And then also at the very end of this stage, you'll start thinking about what questions will we be asking our users. So specifically designing the questions so that they are, so that they kind of elicit the right responses Okay. So we recommend doing around 5 to 6 interviews if it's possible. That's the kind of ideal. And I guess if you are working on a challenge that it might have multiple audience types, so you might have internal stakeholders that use a particular tool in the back end, and then you might have users that use it on the front end as well. So you might want to do some research with each of those different audiences, but it's worth doing, if you can, 5 interviews with each of those different audiences. If you're really short on time, you can start thinking about how to prioritize top 3 questions, for example, so that you can keep interviews really short and snappy with people. And if that feels like a stretch, which it may well do, yeah, just given time, it's you can make it a team exercise to ask your users just maybe one key question or something like that. So a really nice example of where this has worked really well is at Reach Volunteering. So they got all of the staff involved in user research, and so they would decide on 1 or 2 questions that they could kind of almost tack on to the end of any other conversations that we were having. So all of those informal conversations that are happening within the, within this group, which showed up in that Mentimeter, you could be tacking on like just 2 structured questions at the end, or 1. So that's a really nice opportunity to do that. And you can also then check in at team meetings to hear what each of the team has been hearing from those responses as well. So that's just a nice low time suggestion there. So a few things here to think about. So trying to keep our research inclusive. So thinking about who can you involve in this research? So trying not to conduct research with individuals that you already know, or just individuals that you already know. So yeah, having a think about how you can leverage maybe existing community networks, other partners that you've got, local leaders, and that you might be able to kind of go through to recruit people that might be outside of your usual reach as well. So thinking about that. And also designing your research around the needs of your community. So thinking about any additional needs that they might have, taking care to consider, are any of the questions that you're going to be asking, might they kind of trigger any trauma responses or anything like that? So really making sure that we've thought about that. And also, if we think that there's going to be potential for any kind of like trauma responses, thinking about like what are the ways that you can maybe signpost those people to other services at the end of that session, or how can we minimize that response through our questions as well. So it's just having a really good think about how we can minimize kind of like minimize any of that that trauma or any kind of discomfort during our interviews. And then also thinking about how we can thank people for their time. So ideally, so that this doesn't necessarily have to be kind of monetary. It could be something that you offer some support, or you might or like even just informing them about the end of the project. So kind of how has their input, how has their insight actually kind of helped us on this particular project. So different ways of thinking about how to make people feel thanked for their time and feeling like it's less extractive and more inclusive. Okay, so once we had to think about all of those things, it's time then to write a discussion guide. So looking back at your knowledge board, specifically at the what we think we know and the what we don't know columns, we will then start writing our questions, and we've got a worksheet which I've also linked to later late in the deck. I'm just going to show you quickly what this looks like. So it's a worksheet. You can kind of make a copy of it and start using it. So it's got kind of tips on how to plan your research, how to start thinking about who you're researching, you can kind of put a user group in here. What are the things that you want to be able to find out? User research ethics and responsibilities, so covering kind of in a little bit more depth some of what I've already spoken about today. And then actually going into the interview questions as well. So it's got some space here for you to start writing down any questions. And here are some example questions here on the left as well. So this is a toolkit that you can take away and use to design your user research. Okay, I'm going to go back to the slides. So I'm going to put it out to everybody here. So from your perspective, what do you think makes a really great user research question? What are the kind of qualities that that makes a good user research question? And if you can put this in the chat, any kind of thoughts or ideas, that would be amazing. Brilliant. Excellent. Loads of amazing stuff coming through in the chat. Thank you all. Brilliant. Amazing. Yeah, I'll give it another 20 seconds or so. Brilliant. This is fab. Thank you all so much. This is great. So I have got, yeah, like the next slide is about this, and it's essentially, I don't think we really need to go through my slide because everybody's already got all of these down in the chat here. So yeah, so lots of comments here about like no jargon, using kind of open-ended questions, basing stuff on past experience. Yeah, and I think that there's a really nice one here around asking for what we might have missed as well. So I think, you know, turning the interview back to other people and asking for their input and what are the things that they would like us to know is a really great one. Fab. Okay, so thank you all. This is great. I'm going to now then move us on to the next slide, which is about coming back to, yeah, what are the opportunities at this stage? So in step one, as we're planning our user research, what are the opportunities for us to be able to use AI? So I'm going to do a few demos here. So firstly, I'm going to take us back to Gemini, which was doing that deep research exercise in the background. And that's going to help us to pull together research, find out kind of what's going on in the wider sector, in the wider world around our challenge. Then we're also going to look at how we can maybe use AI to create a set of starting questions with the proviso that we then edit. So yeah, we're kind of asking it to make a start for us, but then we will come back and edit and put some more thought into it. And then we'll also look at how we can ask AI to critique your questions to try and avoid that bias or those leading questions, which everybody was talking about in the chat just now. So I'm going to come back to Google Gemini just to look quickly at the outputs of what we put in there. So remember, we were asking it to look at AI use and mental health in young people. So what it's done here, it has created an executive summary for me. And it's got, yeah, like lots of information here. And when you click on here, it actually links to some of the stuff that it's pulled together. So you can then go off and do your own research based on what it's pulled out. And then it kind of dives a bit more deeper into each of these different areas. And here, as I asked it to do, it kind of pulled out a bit of a table. And it's providing me with the source information as well. So really great stuff in here for me to dive into in a bit more detail. Obviously, I'm not going to go through it all on today's call. But yeah, I just wanted to show that it can do some quite cool stuff and save quite a lot of time in just Googling and searching for things that might be out of date. And at the very bottom here, it pulls together all of the different links and the sources that it is used in the report as well. So important, yeah, a really good place to start, I would say. Okay, so then on to number two of that particular on to number two. So using AI to create a set of starting questions. So again, I've prepared a bit of a prompt, and I have actually shared this in the next slide as well. So I'm going to just put this on here. So what I've got in here is, so I'm going to ask it to be really, so I'm going to try and be really specific with this. So acting as an expert user researcher and a young person mental health specialist. So that's kind of setting the tone, the scene, who I want it to act as. And then I've asked it to generate some questions for people ages 14 to 25 who actively use AI tools for X, Y, and Z. And then I've specified my user research goal is, I've added that in here as well. And then I've asked it to generate 7 to 10 distinct questions as well, with a little bit of guidance. So then if I click on enter. So it will start to create some questions for me. And as I said earlier, really important to just take these as a starting point and then tweak them and make sure that they feel relevant and also thoughtful. I think, that's one of the things that we want to really try and do is make people feel like this is a thoughtful experience and a thoughtful activity. So yeah, so you can see it's kind of pulled them out or got different questions based on general usage, the emotional and mental well-being, and boundaries and coping and support. So how people are actually, coping with AI if it gives them kind of random information, that sort of thing. So that's another way of using AI. And then what I'm going to also do is I'm going to take these questions and I am going to try and ask AI to critique the questions, even though it's only written them itself. So what I've done, I did a little while back, was I created a custom GPT, and I uploaded all of the resources and the content that we tend to use in workshops on some of our kind of other longer term programs. And I added it into this chat GPT, which is called the Cast Feedback Wizard, as you can see. And it's essentially kind of a bit of a coach for getting feedback on any questions that I might want to ask people, and like what are the kind of top tips for writing. So you can kind of access all of that information and that knowledge in here. But you can also ask it to critique questions based on some of the stuff that based on some of the principles that we've been talking about and that you all added into the chat just now. So I'm just going to put in those questions that I just got. Very quickly, see what it comes back with. So these are questions that ChatGPT itself created. But we're going to ask them, I'm going to ask ChatGPT to improve and critique them better. Okay. Okay, so it gives you some information on like general strengths and then also how you can improve these questions as well. So it's given us, kind of suggested, you might want to give a bit more information on what generative AI is. There's other things about considering breaking this question into 2 questions to reduce cognitive load. So that was one of the things that some of you mentioned in the chat earlier as well. So yeah, just it can be really helpful to try and improve and slightly tweak the questions that you're asking. Okay, so whistle stop tour of the different kind of areas of where AI might be useful in step number 2. Okay, so and you'll have access to this prompt as well later on. So in the slides. Okay, so I'm going to move us on then to step 3. So this is about the actual delivery of the interviews. So if we're thinking about, interviews being all about human connection and rapport and trust and safety, how do you think, kind of like from your practice and from what it is that you're currently doing, like how can you make your participants feel comfortable when we're doing user research? And yeah, any answers in the chat would be really great. Brilliant. Nice. Keeping it casual, giving a warm welcome, opportunity to stop at any time, super important. Yeah, love that one. No right answer, giving people reassurance. Having a conversation before you start and making tea and coffee available. Nice one. yeah, considering their background and any issues that might be discussed. So being trauma informed. So yeah, super, super important. Letting them know before the session what to expect. Absolutely. Yeah, and scheduling breaks, and yeah, so being really flexible, I think, is yeah, kind of making people feel kind of comforted and warm, and like they're coming into a situation that they know about. So giving them that information up front is really important, and allowing enough time not to be rushed. Absolutely, that's great. Thank you, everybody. I will look forward to kind of diving into those in a bit more detail after. Unfortunately, I can't go through them all at the moment. Brilliant. So yeah, so this slide is kind of loads of, this is all covered, I think, by everything that you've mentioned in there as well. So yeah, comms, welcome check-in, active listening, giving them control. They can stop at any point. They can skip questions. Absolutely, Alexandra, thank you for that one. You might also want to have a think about who is doing the research as well. Like, can you bring somebody in from the community to do that research with them as well, to help them feel more at comfort, more at ease? And then being flexible, kind of being prepared maybe to go off script, even though you've got those questions to fall back on. Brilliant. So yeah, so a few practical tips here. Much of it is which has been covered in your amazing tips. So really important to sign consent, and I'll link to a consent form that we've got. It's a template one that you can make a copy of and start using and tweaking within your organization if you don't already have one that you use. Assigning a note taker can be also quite helpful. So if you do it in pairs, also very helpful, though obviously that doesn't quite fit with the doing it within time constraints and resource constraints. If you don't have somebody else to join you as a note taker, you can always potentially use a transcription tool, and we'll go through some examples of that in a minute when we start thinking about the AI opportunities here. And then reviewing and tweaking the discussion guide, and then yeah, coming to synthesis at the end of that as well. Okay, so that's just a quick screen grab of the consent form that we've got there. Needs updating to fit within your own policies and things like that, but it's there if it's helpful. Okay, so opportunities to use AI. So as I said earlier, we can use a transcription tool to record the session. That then gives us a really nice transcript of everything that we've spoken about, and allows you to particularly concentrate when you're doing user research on your own. And then also, quite interestingly, I don't know how I quite feel about it yet, another way that is happening, that is being used, AI is being used within the charity sector at the moment, and also kind of outside of it, is actually using an AI tool to run user research interviews. So I want to kind of just say that I'm not necessarily endorsing that as an approach, but I just wanted to share that as it is being done by people, and I'll kind of run through some of those examples and what they found and what they've kind of, yeah, what are the parameters that they have that they've got, I guess. Okay, so we're going to start off with, oh, sorry, gone right. Okay, so we're going to start off with an example from Blood Cancer UK. So they have been using Dovetail, which is a user research platform, and it has kind of AI features. It transcribes interviews, and then it automatically kind of tags different themes and different topics that are coming up, so you can identify patterns. And then it also puts out insight summaries, so it's quite quick. Yeah, they found it really useful because they were able to share videos with their senior leadership, snippets of people saying really kind of impactful things that would then sway particular projects, or sway, you know, that challenge of assumptions perhaps going on internally. They said that it sped things up for them, but it still did need that human input for tagging, curating the insight that was coming out of the AI tool, and, you know, kind of just still identifying the nuance of the user research interviews that they were doing. So not perfect by any means, and still requires that human time and human view, I suppose. And it is quite an expensive tool as well. So yeah, it's not going to be kind of for everybody, for all charities by any means, but I just wanted to kind of show that there are other less expensive tools that you can use, obviously checking within AI policies and within, like checking data standards and security. So we sometimes use Fathom AI. I know there's also Otter AI, which are kind of less expensive tools that can be used for transcribing and recording different sessions as well. So they're quite good. Okay, so then moving on. So this is an example. So I've got two examples of organizations using AI to actually deliver the user research interviews that they're doing. So it's really interesting. So Torchbox are a digital agency that has started using AI interviewers. So they did this on a project that they were working with Guy's and St Thomas NHS Foundation Trust. So what they found is that it allowed them to do research at really quite large scale and saved them quite a lot of money and allowed flexibility for the people that they were talking to. So they were talking to super busy trust staff, doctors, nurses, that sort of thing. So really difficult for an interviewer to be able to fit within their schedule. And so they were able to just log online, start the interview, do the interview in their own time, and then kind of it took like 15 minutes or so. And so you'll see that they conducted 85 AI interviews, but obviously they did 61 human ones as well. So they're not just relying on that data from the AI interviews, which I think is really key here. So making sure that they're comparing both human insight and kind of AI collected insight and getting and pulling their conclusions from both of those things. They also said that actually for neurodiverse people, they found it a lot more accessible as well. Really interesting point. And yeah, it records and transcribes notes as well. And yeah, moving on to the second example. So Children's Society, they've been using this tool, Motives AI, again, quite expensive, but is quite an interesting use case, I thought, just to kind of show. And they started using Motives AI to run interviews with their users about a Christmas campaign. So I guess kind of not a hugely emotive topic potentially. And they were able to deliver 2 research projects in just 1 week. So that's, kind of hugely, I mean, it just wouldn't be practical with human researchers. So really interesting that they took that approach. It came down to about £100 per interview, which I think, yeah, depending on, tools, people, staff time, incentives, that sort of thing, they felt was quite good value for money. And then also they said that also that there was a really great output of data. So they had like the summaries, they had quotes, they had video clips, and they could, kind of theme stuff up quite nicely. There were a couple of issues, I think, around, they said that they still all watched all of the interviews themselves anyway. So there's that still not over reliance on AI. They still want to make sure that they are reviewing and making sure that there aren't any missed nuances. They were able to watch it at 1.5 or 2 times the speed. So that did save a little bit of time on that front. But yeah, there was also, they made a decision to use the tool with people outside of their own supporters. So they didn't really want to, they felt that it might feel a bit cold. And that they wouldn't particularly use it for sensitive topics or anything with their own service users as well. So quite very kind of boundaried use of AI here. And then also they found that somebody in one of those instances, they found that somebody had actually disclosed some sensitive information. And so they kind of, that's kind of a challenge, I guess, within any of these tools as well. So you need to be able to have a think about how to safeguard against that happening if you are relying on AI for interviews. So I just wanted to say a really, really quick note here on just bearing in mind as well the impact that user research can sometimes have on interviewers as well. So just bearing in mind that some conversations, depending on where you work or, kind of like the people that you work with, they might be more difficult. So just having a think about how you can design those interviews so that you're also getting the support that you need, whether that's like teaming up with somebody or, having a debrief at the end of each session as well. So just a quick point there. So then on to step number 4. So you've done your research and now it's time to make sense of what you've heard. So you're going to reflect on the notes and the observations that you've got from all of this amazing research that you've done. You're going to start to group some of those common themes and identify those patterns. And here, as a stretch goal, ideally you would do this with a colleague to avoid any kind of researcher bias that might come in. But if you are a solo researcher, if it's not possible, perhaps you could kind of, schedule a quick review meeting with a colleague, just to kind of, show them these are the things, like, does this sound about right? Like, what are your thoughts? Where are the potential challenges? Just so that you're checking in with somebody else to check that bias that you might be bringing in. So this is kind of how it works. So you'll start off with these like disjointed post-it notes at the top, so the yellow ones, and then you will start to pull those into different themes. So you've got social media, you've got use of tech, you've got different pain points, and so you'll start to pull all of that together to identify those themes and those challenges that people are facing. And I have got a template, which it looks a bit scary, but on the left-hand side, it's a Miro board. On the left-hand side is just an example of what a synthesis of user research might look like. On the right-hand side is the template, it's blank, so you can start adding in any notes in there, just if that's useful. So I'll link to that later on. Okay, so opportunities at this stage. So you can potentially use AI tools to draw themes from your interview notes. So many of the tools that I mentioned earlier in those 3 use cases, they automatically do that for you. You can also use other free tools. So for example, Miro and ChatGPT, any of the kind of the free AI tools can do that quite nicely for you to draw out themes. Just to kind of reiterate here, super important to anonymize the notes so that there's no personal data going into the AI tools. And I think also really important as well is that there's we need to have a think about like how we will mitigate for AI misinterpreting the nuance of the interviews that we've done. So what I tend to do is I might do an AI synthesis, but then I will almost always do a manual synthesis for myself as well, just to make sure that research, all of those notes, all of that nuance that I've experienced, that I've heard through my interviews, is captured. And it can be quite helpful to do both of those exercises as a bit of a comparison, so that you're learning which works better for you. But I would generally always recommend doing both at this stage until AI gets a bit better potentially. So then also you can start to use AI to explore opportunities, to do some brainstorming, and what are the opportunities here in response to the challenges and the needs identified. And then one other one I'm just going to really, really quickly demo, because I think we're a bit over time, is using AI as a coach to support you, instead of it doing the work for you, to support you to actually start to think of different ideas to respond to those challenges. So I have prepared I think it's this one. Yeah, I've prepared a quick prompt in here. So I've said, acting as a coach, support me to think creatively about how we can support young people with their use of AI. And I've asked it to ask me constructive questions one by one, which is really important, because otherwise it sometimes kind of gives you a huge list of questions. It's a bit overwhelming, and guide me to explore ideas, solutions, and identify gaps. And what I've done is I've just kind of pulled in some insights that I've got from another report that we did recently, so from some user research with young people. And I'm just going to hit enter. And it will, so it says here, so when you think about these findings as a whole, what do you see as the most urgent opportunity or challenge in supporting young people with their use of AI? So it's starting to kind of make me think slightly differently, or think about slightly differently about the research. And so if I say, biggest opportunity is using AI to learn about it. Just making it up, by the way, just so that you can see what the response then comes back with. So it says, it's really interesting. What might that actually look like in practice? And so it's starting to ask some prompting questions for me to start thinking about stuff. And this can work really nicely for everything, really, kind of, like personal coaching, professional development coaching. Yeah, it's just an interesting way of using AI to think slightly differently, or yeah, be prompted to think differently. Okay, so then moving quickly on to step 5, nearly there. And then we'll move on to questions. I've seen lots coming into the chat, so I'm looking forward to answering those. Yeah, so now we've kind of got all of this insight, we've got all of this research, we now have hopefully kind of moved lots of stuff through from the what we don't know, what we think we don't, or what we think we know, into the what we know columns of our knowledge board. And so now it's really important for us to try and get that buy-in from our stakeholders, maybe kind of like challenging and removing some of those like outdated beliefs that we might have internally about our users, any kind of long-held assumptions, and also trying to bring in a new and updated perspective to the organization, potentially. Things have changed, technology is different, people's behaviors and expectations are very different nowadays. So we recommend organizing a meeting to let your team and your stakeholders know what it is that you've learned. Trying to share as much kind of the qualitative stuff, so the quotes, the snippets, the videos of people actually talking is really, really powerful stuff. Build empathy and will really kind of get buy-in, I think, for the solutions that might need to come out of this research. Try and prioritize with your stakeholders as well, like what are the things that we want to be able to focus on now. And try and also have a think before you go into that meeting, what are the next steps that you need to do. Oh, sorry, I haven't moved back to the slides, so sorry. Yeah, involving suggesting kind of areas for the next steps that you might want to do in your research, like other questions that still need responding to, where are the quick wins, and what else do we need in terms of resource to continue doing this work as well. So again, I've got a template for a discovery playback, which is, it kind of just has a few slides in there that might help structure some of the thoughts and some of the stuff that you might have done and might have learned with your users. So opportunities here for AI. So you could potentially kind of create an AI generated presentation that outlines what you've learned, what you're hoping to do in your next steps. And I've got a quick slide next, which is about using Gamma. So I don't know if anybody's used that already. It's a really kind of slick presentation tool that you can use for free. I think it works on, you get like a number of free credits. And you can create kind of like a short presentation using those credits as well. So it is a free tool. And then another AI use is asking AI to maybe think about some of the questions that your stakeholders might come back with once you've shared this information, so that you can prep your answers and maybe kind of go off and answer any of those questions before going into the session. So just a couple of examples there. And this is just Gamma AI, as I mentioned earlier. You put in some prompts, you can put in some data, you can upload already existing slides that you want it to tweak, and then it will kind of automatically create a whole bunch of really nice slides, which you can then export and take back into Microsoft or Google Slides or things like that. So it's quite versatile. Just to mention that it's worth using this, as with all things AI. I think really that's kind of like the gist of today, is just treating this as a first draft and not the finished product. So expecting to have to review and adjust and tweak. Okay, so whistle stop tour. Realize that some of kind of what I've talked about today kind of potentially is, I guess, depending on kind of where you're at with AI, might be a little bit advanced. So hopefully I can kind of answer some of those questions here as well. And I'm gonna share the link to the feedback wizard that I shared earlier as well, just kind of recognizing that I think that it's a business feature to be able to create your own GPT. But there are also other ways of setting that up, and I can also share the one that I've got so that you can use it as well. I think all you need is just a chat GPT account to use it. Anyway, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to stop talking, because that's quite a lot of information. hopefully we can dive into some of the questions that you might all have. Okay, let me go back in the chat to see what's coming up. Or if anybody wants to shout out any particular questions that have come up right now, please just put your hand up or shout out. So I'm just going through the chat, sorry. Okay, so a question here from Sally Stevens, which is about the deep research function within Gemini. So that is, so how does it change the process? So I think it just, it's less of a general tool, and so actually kind of it goes really specifically into research, and so it will go off and look for lots of different resources and pull that into the report. So it just uses a slightly different, it's more kind of like a specialized function of Gemini rather than some of the other tools that you might be able to use within there, which are like more general AI tools. I don't know if that answers the question. But yeah, it thinks quite differently, and the outputs are always very different. They will, you know, think about what is this research plan that I can put together for you, goes off and then just does that research for you, and then like links to all of those reports. Whereas you might get something a little bit more maybe wordy, or maybe kind of like a bit more, I feel like it might maybe also make up some more of the stuff, or kind of, you know, pull in less relevant stuff. I think it's more directed. And there was a question there from Sarah about whether it has access to academic journals and literature that's behind a paywall. I don't think so. I think it's kind of only stuff that is generally available. I would need to double check on that question though. I don't know the exact response to that. There's also another tool called Perplexity, which is, I think that is a paid for tool, but that also does a similar function to the deep research function. It goes off and does lots of research and pulls everything together for you. And that's, yeah, quite helpful. Okay, so I'm just going to jump back down to that's brilliant. Thank you, Sonia. Thanks for that context. That's really helpful. So yeah, they're giving you the synopsis, but not the full research paper. That's fab. Thank you. Andrea, so I noticed that you use Gemini instead of ChatGPT for the first steps. Yeah, so I think I wanted to, for the first step, because I guess we were thinking about the desk research, so pulling together that report, I wanted to be able to use Gemini and that deep research function. So I think that's why I chose Gemini for that particular exercise. And then I think ChatGPT, I find I prefer sometimes like the outputs of ChatGPT, the tone. I don't know, there's something about ChatGPT that I quite like when it's a little bit more for asking questions, you know, when you're starting to engage with it a bit more. I think that's completely just a personal preference. But yeah, we do tend to kind of swap based on preference, I think, at the moment. I don't know if that answers your question, sorry. Brilliant. Thank you, Julie. So it's free to some. Okay, that's great to know. Yeah, feel free to shout out as well any questions if you want. I don't want to be just me talking. Feel free to shout out. Because I've also lost some of the questions that were coming in like towards the beginning of the session, so I don't want to miss out on any of those. Leanne, yeah, please go for it.
Hi, yeah, it's really interesting, thank you. My question was around when you shared examples of people using AI as interviewers, did they have any feedback on what the interviewees felt about that? Just wondering whether people feel uncomfortable kind of sharing potentially sensitive information when it's not a human being.
Yeah, so they did capture some information, and there is a link to, I think for the second one where they used the second example that I showed, I can't remember, I need to go back to the slide, sorry. Yeah, so I think it was a mixed bag of responses. I think some people really loved it, and they actually found it easier, maybe because they are chatting to a robot essentially, or because it's not a human person. And then I think other people didn't like it. And I do think that yeah, I think it was a really mixed bag. I need to dig out the report that summarizes everything. But yeah, it was a mixed bag. And I think, yeah, depending on personal preference, maybe. And I think, yeah, I did say earlier that the perhaps kind of like neurodiverse people preferred that, or some of the people that identified as neurodiverse people doing that research did prefer it, because I guess, yeah, it was just a slightly different format. I would imagine that you get kind of like more honest responses. You can kind of like let it all out, I guess, to a chatbot. It's less personal.
Yeah, maybe it's about giving the option to people if we've got these two options, or perhaps if it's more nuance that AI might get that bit wrong, keep that to a human being. But yeah, perhaps giving the option to people is the way forward.
Yeah. No worries. Yeah, and I think that's kind of the finding that was the conclusion that I think both of those different experiments came to, was that it's another tool within the user research wheel, I suppose. And it wouldn't necessarily ever substitute real life interviews, but it is kind of a good way to supplement those and kind of get further scale and reach. Yeah, great to give people options, definitely. Any other questions? There's an interesting one here from Jess around the ethical side of things. So yeah, I think, and especially kind of like along the lines of environmental impact. I don't know, Jess, do you want to say anything about that?
Sorry, just coming off mute. Yeah, I think for me, I'm a bit torn. I can see the benefits, and also I feel like it's happening. And so if we don't engage with it, then there's a feeling of we'll be left behind. But at the same time, when you hear about the amount of water that it takes to keep like servers cool, and how that's draining from local like towns, like water supplies and things, it just feels very conflicting as a, if I use this, am I contributing? And I don't know. I feel like you get pulled in different directions. And I wonder, yeah, how people feel about that. And if you've come across any policies where I guess an organization needs to take a stance, and you can have a personal perspective and an organizational perspective. And I wonder how people balance that.
Yeah, it's such a great point, Jess. And I think, yeah, it's a conversation that's definitely happening within CAST, and I would imagine it's happening within lots of other organizations. Definitely a tension between, do we use it? Should we stop using it entirely? And I think, yeah, there's definitely that challenge around being left behind. And I think so at CAST, we are having lots of conversations about it. There's a really nice piece of work that has been done by Friends of the Earth, where they've kind of outlined some principles for AI use. I can try and dig those out, and I can maybe share those with Kaylin before sending out the recording and everything else, if that's okay, Kaylin. Yeah, and I think we definitely try and make sure that the use that we make of AI internally fits within our mission, and kind of, there is a real goal and a real benefit to using AI, not just kind of like a willy-nilly use of it. But I think we definitely feel that we need, in order to be able to influence how AI is being used and how it's being developed and things like that, we as organizations and as individuals as well, we need to know how AI works as well, in order to be able to influence that. And we are doing some work as part of a task force at the moment to look at like general kind of the ethics around AI at kind of like a governmental level as well. So we're kind of involved in some of that stuff. But I think, yeah, it's a really divisive topic. I think important to try and stay on top of stuff, but just try and make sure that it, you know, it fits within your mission as an organization, but also within your own personal principles as well. So figuring that as those out, it's a bit of a kind of a wishy-washy response, I'm afraid. But it's really tricky. It's a really tricky challenge, I think, isn't it? Yeah, and I do think actually there's a really interesting comment in there as well, that one of the things that we wanted to try and explore as well was actually a comparison between some of the tasks that we're doing on a day-to-day basis, like emailing and, you know, website hosting and all that kind of stuff, because I think actually there is no comparison at the moment for any of that stuff. And so, you know, I think thinking about it in the grand scheme of things, is there, that's, yeah, kind of building on that comment there from Mojka. I don't know if I'm saying your name right. I'm very sorry if I've said that horrendously. Yeah, so I think there's still some work to be done to understand it, but I think, you know, using it sparingly and in alignment with missions and policies, I think is the best way to be going about it for now. Any other questions I missed? I feel like there were some other questions. I think we've probably got more time for like one more maybe. Any others? Just looking back through the chat to see if I've missed any others that yeah, Paula.
I had just asked, obviously, if you're using AI in a particular way in any of your research, I take it you have to be really clear to the people that are involved in the research what you're using and how you're using it, just in terms of consent and them feeling okay about that.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. So I think so in the consent form that I've shared, it doesn't actually have an AI section in there yet. I should probably update that. But I think yeah, absolutely. The more upfront and open we can be about that stuff, you know, reassuring people as well that they have to, that we will be anonymizing their data, for example, if we do put it into any AI tools, that there'll be no way of, you know, identifying them through that research. I think, yeah, absolutely. Very, very important. Yeah, really good point. Thanks, Paula. Oh, there's interesting stats in the chat from Sonia. Thank you for sharing those stats. That's really helpful. Okay, that's really good. Thank you. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'm going to move us on to yeah, like just kind of sharing some of the resources that we've got for just a bit of a recap, I guess, and then a quick checkout if that's okay with everybody then. I'll also share my email as well, so you have access. Yeah, you can kind of email me for any questions that you might have after today or any comments. Bear with me just one more second, then I'm just going to quickly share my screen again, and then I'm going to move us quickly onto the resources. So resources are at the very end of the slide deck. They're kind of broken down by the different steps. So hopefully that's a helpful way of, so we've got the knowledge board template. There's the user research discussion guide workbook that will kind of like run you through that whole process of planning your research. I've also linked to the user research, the feedback wizard that I created. That just requires a sign up to ChatGPT, but it's a free sign up, so you don't need to kind of have any of the, you know, any of the other tiers. And that's specifically to just get feedback, coaching on how to create user research plans and questions. There's a consent form template, which I need to update, add in a bit of a section for AI. And then there's the synthesis template in Miro, so how to use that to make sense of the notes that you've been taking. And then the playback slides as well, to feedback to your kind of senior management teams and others. And then so alongside that, so there's just a few other things that I wanted to share with you from kind of CAST. So we've got getting started with AI. It's an email course that you can sign up to. So every week you'll receive a different email, and it's got mini exercises in there. It's got kind of videos, it's got resources, things like that for you to run through each week and yeah, kind of like learn about the basics of AI and some of the ethical stuff as well in there as well. So there's a section in there around yeah, like ethics, environment, that sort of thing. It's hopefully quite useful. There's the library of experiments, which Kaylin, I think, shared earlier, which I saw. And yeah, loads of stuff in there, all from Charities and or charities and funders, should I say. And then there's the AI for Digital Leads peer group that I mentioned earlier. Lots of digital leads doing digital stuff within the organizations. That's kind of the criteria, coming together to explore digital stuff and AI. There's the AI for Grant Makers peer group for funders, particularly, and that's like talking about the opportunities and challenges of AI. The Charity AI Task Force, which I mentioned earlier, so that's like, yeah, looking at kind of how we can how we can champion that responsible, inclusive and collaborative use of AI across the social sector. So that's kind of like looking at quite a systemic approach. It's quite exciting. Then we've also got some shared digital guides, which are like, I guess, kind of recipes for how to embed different tools, how to, yeah, do different kind of activities and use digital tools within organizations as well. So they're very kind of practical. And then we've got the CAST AI Hub. I think that's it. Oh no, there's the newsletter as well. Loads of information. So I realized this is kind of a very jam-packed session. Yeah, so the newsletter, if you want to hear from CAST about, we always send out, I think it's generally kind of monthly or every 2 months, it's kind of occasional, we call it. And it's got lots of stuff in there linking to CAST stuff, but also lots of sector stuff within AI, digital topics as well. So really encourage you to sign up to that as well. Okay, can I, in the last 5 minutes then, can I ask you then just to fill in, there's like 3 questions that I'd really love to kind of get your thoughts on. So if I can ask you to all go back to the Menti, and I will share my screen again on the Menti. So this one, I would like you just to kind of drag and drop where you just drag and drop a pin for where you think that you might use AI in the user research process. And hopefully you can all see that okay. If you don't think you'll use it in the AI in the user research process, then maybe put it at the top left or something like that. I was missing something. Okay, so you can see, brilliant. So yeah, some dots coming up. So hopefully you can all see that as well. Okay. So yeah, quite distributed. So hopefully lots of opportunities there for using AI. And a couple of people still not sure about using AI within the user research process, which I think is absolutely fine. Yeah, it's not, you know, it might not just be the right moment right now. The tools might not be quite right for your organization. The costs might be too much. You might want to kind of abstain completely from using AI for environmental reasons. Could be loads of different reasons. Okay, brilliant. Okay, thank you all. So yeah, really nice spread there. Interesting that there's no delivering your interviews in there yet. I would imagine that's probably also kind of like a cost thing. It's still very specific and quite niche. But yeah, interesting. Thank you. I'm going to share the next slide then. So maybe if I could just ask you to reflect on and share on a next step that you will aim to do in the next 2 weeks. So kind of getting really practical. Yeah. Brilliant. Excellent. And love for the knowledge board. It is a super helpful tool for everything. We use it everywhere. Yes, it's great that you're thinking about using it on a website project as well. Brilliant. Thank you, Laura. Trying out some different AI tools. Brilliant. Yeah, great to kind of experiment and see which one you prefer, which one fits within, yeah, kind of your principles within your data policies, your security, that side of things. And actually, Laura, just thinking about that, if you sign up to the Getting Started with AI new email course, there's some there are some exercises in that will guide you to do some of that experimentation if you'd like some kind of prompts and some ideas for doing that. That's just an idea. In the chat is fine. Thank you. Brilliant. So sharing with leadership, excellent. So doing the knowledge board, looking into the resources and the information. Yeah, I appreciate there's a lot in today's session. And yeah, researching the environmental costs, excellent. So yeah, a bit of experimentation with various different tools, which is really exciting to see. Yeah, speaking to senior management about AI policies as well. So yeah, lots of amazing next steps in here. So thank you all very much for sharing. And then last but not least, and we've got 2 minutes, so hopefully okay, just one word before you're leaving. So how are you feeling? It's a bit of a kind of a check out. How are you feeling? Amazing. Excellent. So informed, inspired, excited. This is great. Yay. Curious, smarter. I like that one. Awesome. Full of ideas. Excellent. Cautious. Yeah, that's good. And I think that's often the case with AI, is that actually the more you dive into it, the more you realize that, yeah, it kind of opens that horizon and actually kind of makes you realize that you do need to be a bit more cautious. And that's actually something that we've seen in an AI survey that we did recently. Was actually the first year that we did it, people weren't so cautious, but then the second year people were more cautious, and I think that's because they'd actually had a chance to understand what AI actually did and how it worked. So yeah, really interesting. Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you all so much. We are on time, so I'm going to let you all go. But thank you so much for being here today and for asking amazing questions, and for sharing all of your tips on user research questions and how to make people comfortable in interviews as well. I've really enjoyed today's session, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Tori. Such a great session. Really, really enjoyed, and thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks ever so much. Thank you. Bye.